Okay, so this is a test review for Unit 3, Topic 1 in Pre-Calculus, and I started to do my answer key and realized I should probably make a video while I write it. So I stopped number 1, and I will explain what I already did, and then I'll keep going and I'll finish the review on video for you. So since we have this point, -3, -5, I put that in left 3 and down 5, but I have to find the hypotenuse. So I'm going to use Pythagorean theorem. Here's my calculator. -3 squared plus -5 squared is 34. So if you think of Pythagorean theorem to solve for the hypotenuse, 34 is the radius squared, which is the hypotenuse, so you square root both sides, and that's how I got the square root of 34. So now, to find all 6 trig ratios for this quadrant and this triangle, sine of the angle is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so that's -3. And then tangent is opposite over adjacent. And negative divided by negative is positive. The other 3 functions are reciprocals of the first. So cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. We always put the negative in the numerator or in the very front. We don't like seeing the negative in the denominator. It just looks funny. So then I reciprocaled, or took the reciprocal of the other 2. So now for number 2, I go over 1 and down 5 this way. So to find my radius, 1 squared plus -5 squared, that's going to be the square root of 26. So we've got sine, cosine, tangent. Cosecant, secant, cotangent. Okay, so sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And tangent is opposite over adjacent. And now I'm going to take the reciprocal to get my other answers. Okay, find the exact value of all 6 trig functions. So let me figure out 3 pi over 2, if I think of my unit circle, is down here on the negative y-axis. And since it's the unit circle, we're going to go over 0 and down 1 for the radius of 1. So we've got sine, cosine, tangent, and then, wait, that looks crooked to you. There we go. Cosecant, secant, and cotangent. Okay, so sine is the y-coordinate, that's -1. Cosine is the x-coordinate, and tangent is y over x. So -1 over 0, that's undefined. And then cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So if I think of these as all over 1, that's still -1. Secant becomes 1 over 0, that's undefined. And cotangent is 0 over -1, so that's 0. Okay, 5 pi over 2, that's more than a full rotation. So if I subtract 2 pi, I can figure out the coterminal angle and where that's located. So I'm going to do 5 over 2 minus 2. So that's pi over 2. That's up here. And this is the point 0, 1. So we've got sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, cotangent. Okay, so sine is the y-coordinate, that's 1. Cosine's the x-coordinate. Tangent is y over x, that's undefined. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine. And cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. So it's pretty much the same answers as 3, but with positive signs instead of negative. Okay, number 5. If cosine is negative 1/2, we are in quadrant 2. What are the other 5 functions? Okay, so cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So now we've got y squared plus negative 1 squared has to equal the radius squared. So we get the square root of 3. So we need sine, cosine, they gave us tangent, cosecant, secant, cotangent. I wish I had a stamp for all 6 of those. That would be faster than writing it. All right, so sine is adjacent over hypotenuse. I said that wrong. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. My apologies. Tangent is adjacent. Oh my goodness, Miss Weiss. Okay, reset. All right, now I won't get it wrong. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. I put the negative in the numerator, it looks better. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine, which they give us up here. And cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. Okay, let's see if I can do 6 without saying anything incorrectly. 4th quadrant, opposite over hypotenuse. So x squared plus negative root 3 squared will be 2 squared. So x squared is 1. That's 1, because the square root of 1 is 1. And it's to the right, so it's positive 1. All right, sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, cotangent. All right, cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent, opposite over adjacent. Cosecant, reciprocal of sine. Secant, reciprocal of cosine. Cotangent, reciprocal of tangent. Okay, number 7. Quadrant 3's down here. We've got opposite over hypotenuse. So x squared plus negative root 2 squared equals radius squared. That is the square root of 2, but it's to the left, so we've got negative. Sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, and cotangent. Okay, cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent, opposite over adjacent. Ooh, negative root 2 over negative root 2. Do not leave that as an answer. That can simplify. Anything divided by itself is 1, and negative divided by negative is positive. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine, and the reciprocal of 1 is 1. All right, enough triangles. Now we've got exact values. Before I do my exact values, I want to draw all of my key information. So I'm going to draw my special right triangles at the top. We've got pi over 6 is 30 degrees. Pi over 3 is 60. So I've got my 1, 2, root 3 triangle. My 45, 45, 90 triangle. My quadrants, over 1 and up 0, over 0 and up 1, left 1, and down 1, 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi. All students take calculus. Okay, so I would draw those 3 things on the top of your test, it will help tremendously to refer to them. Negative angles mean clockwise, or we can figure out what is coterminal with that. So let's see, -5/6. You can see mine. All right, try and get rid of the glare there. So -5/6, if I add 2 pi, that's the same place as 7 pi/6. When I use my reference angles to figure out which quadrant I'm in, so I'll draw one more thing up here. Oops, sorry, I knocked my phone stand. Everything I base off of is 2 pi and pi, but I like common denominators. So this would be 6/6 or 3/3 or 4/4. And then 2 pi, so to divide by 6 and get 2, it's 12 pi/6. To divide by 3 and get 2 is 6 pi/6. And divide by 4 to get 2 is 8 pi/4. Okay, so those are gonna be all my equivalent. So 7 pi/6. 7/6 is a little more than 1, so it puts me down here in the 3rd quadrant. So I know that this answer is going to be negative. Pi/6 for sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so my answer is -1/2. Oh, let's go this way. Okay, 13/3. Ugh, that's more than 2 pi. So if, sorry, you need to be able to see that. I do 13/3 and I subtract 2 pi. Well, that's still more than 2, so I'm going to subtract 2 again. That's the same place as pi/3. So here's pi/3. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Pi/3 is in the 1st quadrant, so it's positive. Pi/2, that's up here. Tangent is y/x. That's undefined. Okay, cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So if I find sine of 5 pi/3, I can reciprocal it, or take the reciprocal is the better way to say that, to get my answer. So sine of 5 pi/3, well, 5/3 is a little less than 6/3, because the 5 is a little less than 6. So it puts me in the 4th quadrant. So that's negative, because only cosine and secant are positive there. Pi/3, go back to this triangle for sine, is opposite over hypotenuse. But I have to take the reciprocal for cosecant, so that's -2/√3. (17/6) is more than 2, so let's figure out what that goes down to. Take away 2, math, enter, enter, that's 5/6. So this is the same thing as secant, as 5 pi/6. And secant is the reciprocal of cosine. Okay, 5/6 is a little less than 6/6, so that puts me up here in the 2nd quadrant. In the 2nd quadrant, secant and cosine are negative. Pi/6 as a reference angle, so cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, but I have to take the reciprocal because it's secant. (-pi/4), all right, because that one is still between 0 and 2 pi, I'm just going to go clockwise with my angle, so that's a C. So (-pi/4) puts me down here in the 4th quadrant, so cosine's positive there. And then cosine of pi/4 is adjacent over hypotenuse, or you can write that as √2/2. Okay, tangent of 3 pi/4. So 3/4 is a little less than 4/4. So here's my 4/4. A little less puts me up here in the 2nd quadrant. Tangent in that quadrant is negative. Go to my reference angle. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. And there's my -1. Oh, I could have written that up here too. So, that helps. All right, number 15. It's negative 7, 6. So let's find out where that is. Because it's negative, I'm going to add 2. And that's at 5 pi over 6. So this is the same thing as sine of 5 pi over 6. Okay, 5/6. Go to my equivalent fractions. 6/6, so 5 is a little less up here in the second quadrant. Sine is positive. Sine of pi over 6 is 1/2. That is our answer. All right, for 16, secant is the same as the reciprocal of cosine, but 7/4, negative 7/4, let's figure out what that's equivalent to. Same as pi over 4. So if I go to cosine of pi over 4, that is 1 over root 2. But we have to take the reciprocal, so that's root 2 over 1. And it's positive because we're in the first quadrant. Oh, sorry, you can't see my picture. Sorry. Cosine of pi over 4 is opposite. Nope, it's adjacent over hypotenuse, so that's the 1 over root 2. Okay, for 17, cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So 5 over 4 is a little more than 4 over 4, so it puts me down here in the third quadrant. So this answer is going to be negative. Sine of pi over 4 is 1 over root 2. This way, Miss Weiss. 1 over root 2, but we have to take the reciprocal of that. So I get negative root 2 over 1. Okay, 18. Let me see if I can fit. No, I can't fit everything on the page. Sorry. Okay, 18. That's going to be the reciprocal of tangent. Now, 7/4 is almost 8 over 4. So if I go up here, 8 over 4 is my 2 pi. So a little less than that is 7. That puts me in the the fourth quadrant. So this answer is going to be negative. Then we're going to go tangent of pi over 4 is 1. And the reciprocal of 1 is 1, so our answer is negative 1. 10/3, that's more than 2. So let's find out the coterminal angle. 10/3, take away 2, it's 4/3. Okay. Here we go. Cosine of 4 pi over 3. So 4 over 3, here's my 3 over 3. It's a little more than 1, so it's down here in the third quadrant. That makes it negative. Cosine of pi over 3 is 1/2, but we need the reciprocal, so that's 2 over 1. Okay, 5 pi over 2, negative. Negative 5 over 2. I'm going to add 2 to that, add 2 again. That's the same as 3 pi over 2. So if I go to 3 pi over 2, tangent, it's down here. Tangent is y over x. Negative 1 over 0 is undefined. And then cotangent of pi, that's the same as the reciprocal of tangent of pi. So let's see, out here at pi, tangent is y over x. So that's 1 over 0. The reciprocal of that is 0 over 1. No, Miss Weiss, no. This 1 carries over. Tangent of pi is 0. 1 over 0 is undefined. Sorry. So the answer to 21 is undefined. Check the boxes of any angle that has the exact value of negative root 3 over 2. Okay, let me go back over here for a second. Root 3 over 2 is this ratio. So if I have a cosine with a pi over 6, or a sine, so opposite of pi over 3, but negative So this is 3 over 3, 6 over 6, to get 2. Okay, so there's my equivalent, pi and 2 pi. 4 pi over 3, so sine of 4 pi over 3 is this reference angle, and 4 over 3 is a little more, so that would be negative, so that is correct. Tangent, nope. Cosine, pi over 6. Oh, yep, okay, there's that. But let's see, 5 over 6 puts me up here, where cosine would be negative, so yes, that is negative root 3 over 2. Another denominator of pi over 3, a reference angle of pi over 3. So 5/3 is almost 6/3, so that puts me in this quadrant. Yep, so that would be negative. Okay, so sine of pi over 6, that's not one of these, so no. Sine, okay, 2 pi over 3, so we got this again. And then 2/3 is a little less than 3/3, but that puts me in the sine quadrant. So this is positive root 3 over 2, so I'm not going to check the box. Negative pi over 3. So let's find out where that is located. Oops. That's 5 pi over 3. Hey, look at that. We already checked it. Check it again. So you should have the first, the third, the fourth, and the last one checked. Yay, that is the end of the test review.